Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Janvrin, and this is the first video that I'm doing here on my new YouTube channel where I'm going to be talking about the NFL, fantasy football, the draft, free agency, in-season stuff. And I'm not new to YouTube though. I do have another YouTube channel where I do cover, metal music, metalcore, deathcore, totally different world. But I've been in the NFL space now for over a decade, and I really wanted to try to take that text work that I do into a video format, and I think now is the time. And I think, coming off the Super Bowl, there's a thing that I always think about. I always try to project into the future, like who are going to be the next quarterbacks next year. Some of them are obvious, and some of them, quite frankly, are kind of hard to figure out. And there was a couple of them when I was going through this, exercise, trying to come up with this video idea, and I'm like, man, I have no goddamn idea. But I figured, hey, let's give it a shot. We're gonna put this out on the internet, see what people think of it. But anyways, we'll start now by me predicting all starting quarterbacks week one for every NFL team. We'll start in the AFC East. We'll start off easy here, okay? So I think the AFC East is pretty easy to figure out. But starting with the Buffalo Bills, it's gonna be Josh Allen. We don't really need to discuss that. It's obvious. The Miami Dolphins, I went with Tua Tagovailoa. I know that there's been a lot of trade rumors swirling around this young man for a while, but, with new head coach Mike McDaniels on board, and we saw that video of him talking to Tua on the phone, FaceTiming him, Tua's their guy. And I think that Mike McDaniels' offense coming over from the San Francisco 49ers really fits the Miami Dolphins and Tua's skill set very, very well. I'm very excited to see how they do that with the running game and also with this offensive line that is, quite frankly, pretty terrible. So I'm curious to see what Mike McDaniels does, how he gets creative utilizing Tua's skill set. The New England Patriots, Mac Jones, that's pretty evident. The New York Jets, Zach Wilson. However, I will say that if we see similar play from Zach Wilson this year as we saw last year, and listen, I know he's a rookie, but they have some decent playmakers, nothing crazy. But I think that they add one here in the draft, maybe like a Drake London, and then maybe even add another offensive lineman at the top of the draft. Listen, man, this offensive line is going to be coming together. I think that the skill position players will be there, and I think that Zach Wilson's got to show something to continue on here as the quarterback of the New York Jets. But I will say in 2022, 2023, he will be the starting quarterback for the Jets. Now I want to go over to the West Coast, AFC West. The Denver Broncos, we're going to start it off hot here. I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. Now, I really I can understand why a lot of people may think he's just going to go back to Green Bay. They're going to offer him this mega contract and whatnot. But it just feels right? Like, like you have Nathaniel Hackett there now as the head coach. You have a team that is ready to go right now. Like, this team is ready. And I know that, you hear that everywhere, but they are. They have a ton of great skill position players, Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. And they also, I think, probably have the resources to not only get Aaron Rodgers, obviously, but to bring in a Devontae Adams, whether it's a sign and trade or whatever. And with that, you may need to give up somebody like a Cortland Sutton or a Jerry Jeudy. But to get Devontae Adams there in Denver with Aaron Rodgers, plus the rest of the team, I think that is a no-brainer. Kansas City Chiefs, hey, man, I don't know, dude. Hey, maybe Patrick Mahomes, but it could be Chad Henne. It's Patrick Mahomes. The Las Vegas Raiders, I'm going with Derek Carr. I think that, with McDaniels coming over, I think that, they're going to stick with Derek Carr. And the thing is, too, with Derek Carr, that he's not a bad quarterback. Like, he is, I would say he's borderline top 10. I just think that the rest of the team around him sucks. To be honest with you, you need to get this guy some playmakers. You need some guys on defense. You cannot be relying on 33-year-old Casey Haywards in the secondary to get the job done. You've got to get this guy a team around him. He's not a guy who's going to carry a team on his back like a Mahomes, but he is a guy that you can win a Super Bowl with. You just need to get the weapons there. Now, moving over to the Los Angeles Chargers, going to be Justin Herbert. Of course, Justin Herbert's fantastic, and I think they really get over that hump this year and finally get to the postseason. Now, we're going to move over to the AFC South, and we're going to start with the Houston Texans. And this one, you're going to be pretty surprised here, but I went with Jalen Hurts. And I think, obviously looking around the league, right, they're going to trade Deshaun Watson. We know that. And how many teams can reasonably pull off this trade? You know, Miami was always rumored to be the team for Deshaun Watson, but I think, you know, they're going to stick with Tua. And with that, the Eagles just make a lot of sense. And I think that they can win with Watson and go far with Watson. They have 3 first-round picks. They just have the assets to do so. And they can also swing Jalen Hurts in a trade. And I think otherwise, if it wasn't for Watson, I think Jalen Hurts is obviously the starter this year. I think Jalen Hurts is a fine quarterback. You know, I'm not too big on him in terms of how he passes the ball. I think that, you know, that's still a work in progress, but the guy is a threat with his legs enough that can really make a defensive coordinator have nightmares, you know? And so I think just with this trade, that warrants a Jalen Hurts move, especially for a guy like Watson, assuming everything checks out, right? I mean, we don't know. I mean, who knows? There could be more stuff that comes out. We don't know, but I think right now, assuming everything's good to go, I think Watson will end up going to the Eagles in exchange for Jalen Hurts and draft pick compensation. For the Indianapolis Colts, now this is the one that I had the most trouble with, and I'm racking my brain over here, right? Because obviously there's all these reports about Carson Wentz, you know, going, trade, or release, and then I start thinking, who the hell is going to trade for this guy, right? Like, the guy's owed like 25-something million bucks. I just cannot fathom a team trading for this guy. So I think they're going to eventually part ways with him. And again, I'm looking around the league. I think I'm going to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And because here's why. You know, there's some other guys out there like a Russell Wilson or a Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think the problem with them, right, is that I just can't imagine, like, okay, we traded compensation to get Carson Wentz, but now let's go trade more assets to get another kind of quarterback. Like, if you get Russell Wilson, okay, I don't think that's going to happen, obviously. But, you know, I just can't imagine them trading more compensation for a Jimmy G, even if it's like a third, right? Because they have a second-round pick. They don't have a first-round pick. So what, are you going to have one pick in the first? You're going to have like a couple picks in the first 2 days of the draft? I just don't see that. So I'm looking at the free agency market. You know, there's guys like Teddy Bridgewater. There's guys like Jameis Winston potentially. I just don't see it. But Fitzpatrick's a guy who, you know, he was out last year. But before that, Fitzpatrick had a 70.7 PFF passing grade in 2021 in his starts. You know, there's obviously that turnover-worthy play potential with Fitzpatrick. But I think that, you know, looking at this team with Jonathan Taylor, you don't really need to depend on Ryan Fitzpatrick, which, I mean, you shouldn't be anyway, no matter what team you are. But I think that he is a fine bridge quarterback as you try to get through this next season post Carson Wentz. Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, of course, Tennessee Titans. Definitely going to go Ryan Tannehill again. Move over to the AFC North now. We got the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Shocker. The Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, of course. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that, you know, coming off of Big Ben, this doesn't really seem like a team that's going to, like, you know, get that bridge quarterback. I think they're going to draft highly here. I think they're going to move up in the draft. And I think, you know, we've seen all the reports about the Senior Bowl with Malik Willis. You know, obviously Malik Willis is a project, but he does offer rushing capability. That's, you know, not quite Lamar Jackson, but he's up there. I mean, he'll be up there in terms of quarterbacks that can run, and I think that he'll add another element to the Steelers offense that could be dangerous, especially in the AFC North, rivaling Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. So I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will move up in the draft, take Malik Willis, and he'll be the week 1 starter. And the Cleveland Browns, I guess we're going to go Baker Mayfield one more time. I think, here's the thing, right? Like, Baker was really tough to watch last year, but, you know, obviously injured, and there's nobody to throw to. I mean, nobody, right? So I think in the draft, you got to go get somebody like a Garrett Wilson or a Jameson Williams. Give him somebody, you know? I mean, literally, they have nobody. Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, like who do you expect to thrive in that? I'm not saying Baker Mayfield is going to get Jameson Williams and be a world beater, but I think you give him another year, see how it goes. Now we're going to move over to the NFC, starting in the NFC East. I'm going to go with Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys. The New York Giants, you know, they have a new coaching staff, so there is some potential here but I think that Daniel Jones is going to get another shot. I think he'll get one more year, and if it doesn't work out and they're picking high in the draft again, I think that they'll probably look, you know, there's some guys coming out next year like a DJ Ungalele, assuming that, you know, he plays well, like, you know, because he didn't look great last year, but We'll see what happens with next year's quarterback class. We don't know, but in terms of this next year, I think it'll be Daniel Jones for at least another year in New York. The Philadelphia Eagles, we already talked about it, but I think that they're going to make that swing for Deshaun Watson, assuming everything checks out. The Washington Commanders, still getting used to that name, but I think it's going to be Taylor Heineke, but I do think they're going to take a quarterback at number 11 overall, maybe like a Kenny Pickett or a Sam Howell, somebody like that. I think there'll be somebody waiting in the wings that will take over during the season, but I think it will be Taylor Heineke off the bat. That's kind of where I've landed in this quarterback carousel. NFC West, Arizona Cardinals, man. When I was first doing this list, I started, kind of coming up with this list a few days ago. I was like, Kyler Murray, duh, obviously. But now, obviously, there's a lot of that stuff going on with the Instagram and the social media, and he calls his girlfriend, he puts in his AirPods. Lots of weird smearing kind of going on here. And I think, while that's ugly, I just don't see a path to Kyler Murray leaving the Arizona Cardinals this year. Unless he goes to baseball, I just don't see it, because the team has control of this guy for another 2 years, right? And if you trade Kyler Murray, I think Steve Keim needs to be fired. I just can't imagine trading this guy. Of course, you can get a haul and a half for him. But again, that goes back to the whole, we talked about Deshaun Watson earlier in terms of draft pick compensation. Kyler Murray would require just an inordinate amount of assets to get him. So I think we're going to see Kyler Murray back in Arizona despite all of this crazy stuff going on. Los Angeles Rams, Super Bowl champions. I think we're going to have Matthew Stafford back, but I am very curious how the rest of the team shakes out, with OBJ and Von Miller being free agents and all that. I'm very curious to see what happens with this team moving forward, with life after those guys, potentially Sean McVay going to call games in the booth, who knows, but I think it'll be Matthew Stafford back in 2022. San Francisco 49ers, it's time for Trey Lance, man. I mean, there is no way that you can trade all that draft pick compensation. Jimmy G's pretty much already said that he's gone, and if you go with anybody besides Trey, I think the only guy that you could bring in to not start Trey Lance this year is if Tom Brady decides to come back. That's the only guy I can think of where you won't be looked at as a laughing stock for that. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to do that. I think it's going to be Trey Lance, and that he'll be the quarterback of the 49ers in 2022, 2023. Seattle Seahawks, I think it's going to be Russell Wilson again, and here's why. Pete Carroll's obviously getting older, right? He's 70 years old. And I don't think that he would be back for a rebuild. You could say maybe he's there for 1 year of the rebuild, but I just don't see it. And I think that we would have had some sort of announcement on Pete Carroll retiring by now, if that were the case. And so, Russell Wilson has come out and said that he wants to be back in Seattle. And so I think that this is going to come back again another year, and I think that this will probably be it. I think that this will be Russell Wilson's last season. Pete Carroll will retire. Russell Wilson will go elsewhere, and they'll start a mega rebuild. But the team's not going to be good. So, I would trade Russell Wilson, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Again, I would, but I don't think it will happen. The NFC South, we have the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's going to be Matt Ryan, of course, with their contract that they gave to him last year. If you cut him right now, according to Over the Cap, if you cut him right now pre-June 1, $40 million in dead money. I don't think they're going to do that. So he's there for at least another year. Carolina Panthers, sadly, it's Sam Darnold, I think, because if you cut him, that's $18.5 million in dead money, and no one's trading for that guy. But I think they could draft a quarterback maybe in the second round or something like that, somebody to have behind him. Maybe if we see a Desmond Ridder fall or a Matt Corral, with his injury, something like that, I think we could see that. The New Orleans Saints, I think it'll probably be Jimmy G. I think that this is a team that is kind of built in a way where they're always trying to win. And, I think that they'll be able to trade the draft pick compensation. I know what you're going to say, the salary cap and all that. I know, but the thing is with the Saints is that they have a lot of restructurability. They can push off a ton of money. They're wizards with the salary cap. They can push off a bunch of money to warrant bringing in a Jimmy G, who, he is a middle-of-the-road guy, but I think he's an upgrade over Taysom Hill or a Jameis Winston. And so I've never seen the Saints as a team that's going to go and get that rookie and build it up. Maybe they bring in a weapon to replace Michael Thomas if they need to trade him as part of freeing up that cap space. But I think that's kind of where Jimmy G lands. It's kind of where I've kind of ended up, either there or Washington. I could see the Washington Commanders being another landing spot for Jimmy G, but I ultimately think it'll be the Saints. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, again, we talked about him earlier, being cut. Maybe it's Carson Wentz. Maybe he gets cut. He clears waivers, and the Buccaneers bring him in on a cheap deal while they try to groom Kyle Trask for another year. I just don't think Kyle Trask is the guy this year. I don't think you throw out Blaine Gabbert. I mean, come on. Carson Wentz, we saw some play from him last year that was the good side of variance. And, unless Brady's walking back through that door, there's really not a lot of options. I mean, you could try to swing a bat for Russell Wilson, but again, I don't think you get him. You could try to get a Deshaun Watson, which I'm not ruling that out, but I don't know. You would have to trade a lot to go get him. Of course, the team is ready to win now, so maybe, Bruce Arians says, hey, I'm almost done. I ain't going to have to worry about those draft picks in a few years, and maybe they make that trade. Very, very well could, but I'll guess Carson Wentz for now, but I would not be surprised if they do get like a Deshaun Watson, because Bruce Arians just says, F it, trade all those picks. I'm not going to be here after a year or two anyway, and let's roll. But now let's move over to the final division, the NFC North. Chicago Bears, going to be Justin Fields. We know that. Detroit Lions, it'll be Jared Goff for another year, but I could see them drafting again towards they have the 32nd pick since the Rams won the Super Bowl. So I could see them getting like a Sam Howell or a Corral or a Ritter there with the final pick in the first round. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Now it's time for you to start his heir apparent, who has looked like dog, since he's come into the league. Very limited action, but the guy just does not look like he's it. But what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? I don't really have any answers besides really going with Jordan Love this year and just, giving him the year, see how it works out. And then, if he stinks, you're drafting towards the top of the draft. Maybe you take a quarterback next year, or you see what the market looks like next year. But I think it's probably looking like it's Jordan Love if Aaron Rodgers doesn't return. Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins. There's a new coaching staff here, so, you could be like, oh, maybe they move on from Cousins. But I don't think so. I think that looking at this quarterback class overall, it's kind of meh. There's really not a guy that's like a Trevor Lawrence, in this draft. So the thing is, too, is that Kirk Cousins is actually a pretty good quarterback. He had an 80.6 PFF passing grade, 35 touchdowns. I just think that, I don't really know what it is with him. It just doesn't seem like it ever comes together and clicks. There's some offensive line concerns, sure. There's some defense concerns, sure. But I think you give him another year with the new coaching staff, and then if it doesn't work out, the coaching staff moves on and gets their own guy and builds a franchise around somebody else. But there you guys have it. Those are my predictions for all week one starting quarterbacks for all 32 NFL teams. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Some of these are probably crazy. There's some of them, like I said, I'm kind of like, on, like, for example, Carson Wentz to the Buccaneers. I really don't know. Ryan Fitzpatrick to the Colts. I really don't know. There's some that I just had to guess, and so I'm very curious what you guys think. So let me know down in the comments, and until the next video, I will see you later. Peace.